You played your part well, but I count consequences better.
I should have known something was wrong when the barista wrote "Call this now" on my coffee cup instead of my usual Nick. But honestly, after 3 years of marriage to Elena, I'd gotten used to weird surprises. What I wasn't prepared for was the voice on the other end of that number, telling me my wife might be a Russian spy. Let me back up. My name is Nick Harmon, and until that Tuesday morning in October, I thought I had a pretty normal life. I'm 37, work in cybersecurity for a mid-sized tech company in Hartford, Connecticut, and my biggest worry was whether Elena would remember to pick up milk on her way home from her late-night project meetings. The coffee shop was my morning ritual. Grind and Brew, a hipster place downtown with exposed brick walls and baristas who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. Except for Kira. She was different, always watching, always listening, like she was cataloging every conversation for some invisible database. "Your usual, Nick?" she asked that morning, her dark eyes scanning the room behind me. "Yeah, large coffee, black, and maybe some insight into why my wife comes home smelling like expensive cologne that isn't mine." Kira's hand paused over the cup. "Rough night?" "Rough 3 months. But hey, at least I'm consistent in my misery." She handed me the cup with what I thought was a sympathetic smile. I didn't look at it until I was halfway to my car. The number was written in red ink, urgent and unmistakable. I sat in my Honda Civic staring at those 10 digits like they might rearrange themselves into something less ominous. My phone felt heavy in my hand as I dialed. "Federal Bureau of Investigation, Special Agent Hollis speaking." The coffee went cold in my other hand. "I'm sorry, what?" "Mr. Harmon, we need to talk. Don't go home. Don't call your wife. Drive to 1247 Industrial Boulevard, Warehouse C. Come alone." "Wait, hold on. How do you know my—" "30 minutes, Mr. Harmon. Your country needs you. More importantly, your marriage might depend on it." The line went dead. I sat there for a full minute, watching normal people walk by with their normal problems, wondering when my life had turned into a bad spy movie. Then I started the car and drove toward what I was pretty sure would be the end of everything I thought I knew. Warehouse C looked like every abandoned building in every thriller movie. Rusted metal siding, broken windows, and an overwhelming sense that bad things happened here regularly. Agent Hollis was waiting by a black SUV, looking exactly like Central Casting's idea of a federal agent. Tall, gray-haired, and wearing a suit that cost more than my monthly salary. "Mr. Harmon?" He extended a hand that could have crushed walnuts. "Thank you for coming." Did I have a choice? There's always a choice, but some choices have better outcomes than others. He gestured toward the warehouse. "Shall we?" Inside, the warehouse had been converted into a makeshift command center. Computer screens, surveillance equipment, and photographs covered several folding tables. And there, pinned to a corkboard like some kind of twisted art project, were pictures of Elena. Elena at her office. Elena meeting with a man I didn't recognize. Elena handling what looked like small electronic devices. Elena looking nothing like the woman who complained about my snoring and forgot to replace the toilet paper. "Your wife, Mr. Harmon, is involved in an operation to steal and transfer advanced drone technology to foreign interests, specifically Russian interests." I laughed. Actually laughed. "Elena? My Elena? The woman who can't figure out how to reset the Wi-Fi router? You think she's some kind of international spy?" "Not a spy, a facilitator. Someone who provides access, resources, and cover for the real operators." Hollis pointed to the unknown man in the photographs. "Maxim Antonov, also known as Max. He's the CTO at your wife's company, DroneWorks Industries. He's also a Russian intelligence asset." The room felt smaller suddenly. "You're serious? Deadly serious. They're planning to transfer proprietary military drone software within the next week. Software that could compromise national security if it falls into the wrong hands." I stared at the photos, trying to reconcile this Elena with the woman who cried during dog food commercials. "What do you want from me?" "We want you to plant this." Hollis held up what looked like an ordinary pen. "It's a tracking and disruption device. When they attempt the transfer, this will allow us to locate and stop them. And if I say no, then your wife and her boyfriend continue their operation, potentially putting American lives at risk. And you go home to a marriage that's already over, you just don't know it yet." The boyfriend part hit harder than the national security angle. Show me the rest. Hollis nodded to another agent, who handed me a tablet. The screen showed text messages between Elena and Max. My wife's words, but not the Elena I knew. Nick's working late again. Perfect timing. He's so clueless. Sometimes I feel bad for him. The transfer needs to happen this week. Nick's cybersecurity conference is in Denver. He'll be gone 3 days. Can't wait to celebrate afterwards, just you and me. I handed the tablet back before I could read more. What exactly does this pen do? It creates an invisible network disruption field. When they attempt to upload or transfer the stolen data, it will fail. We'll be monitoring their communications, and the moment they try to execute, we move in. And Elena? That depends on her level of cooperation when we arrest her. I looked around the warehouse, at the serious faces and expensive equipment, at the evidence of my wife's betrayal spread across multiple tables. 3 years of marriage, and I'd never suspected a thing. Either Elena was an incredible actress, or I was the most oblivious husband in Connecticut. How do I plant it? Agent Hollis smiled for the first time since I'd arrived. Very carefully, Mr. Harmon. Very carefully. Going home after learning your wife might be a foreign agent is like trying to act normal with a live grenade in your pocket. Every familiar thing, Elena's coffee mug in the sink, her shoes by the door, the photo of us from our honeymoon in Cancun, felt like evidence in a case I was only beginning to understand. Elena was in the kitchen when I walked in, stirring something that smelled like her grandmother's pasta sauce. She looked up with the same smile she'd been giving me for 3 years, and for a moment I wondered if the FBI had made a mistake. You're early, she said, reaching up to kiss my cheek. I thought you'd be at the coffee shop longer. Kira was busy today. Lot of customers. The pen felt heavy in my jacket pocket. Smells good. Trying a new recipe. How was work? Same old cybersecurity drama. Hackers trying to steal data. Companies trying to protect it. The eternal dance. I watched her face for any reaction to the word steal, but she just nodded and went back to stirring. Speaking of work, I might be late tomorrow night. Big project deadline coming up. The drone thing? Elena's spoon paused for just a fraction of a second. Yes, the drone thing. Very technical, very boring. You'd hate it. I opened the refrigerator and grabbed a beer, using the door to hide my expression. Try me, what kind of drones? Oh, flying robots. They go up, they come down, they take pictures. She laughed, but it sounded forced. Nothing as exciting as your hacker stories. The pen had to go in her purse. Agent Hollis had been specific. It needed to be something she'd carry to meetings, something that would be close to their equipment during the transfer. Elena's purse was her lifeline. She took it everywhere, guarded it like it contained state secrets, which apparently it might. I'm going to change clothes, I said, heading toward the stairs. Dinner in 20 minutes? Perfect. Elena's purse sat on the hallway table where she always left it. A black leather bag I'd bought her for Christmas last year. Expensive enough that she'd actually hugged me when she opened it. Now it felt like I was defusing a bomb as I unzipped the main compartment. Her wallet, keys, makeup bag, phone charger, and 3 pens that looked exactly like the FBI's tracking device. My hands were shaking as I dropped the pen among her others, zipping the purse closed just as Elena called from the kitchen. Nick, can you grab the wine from the dining room? Sure thing. Dinner was surreal. Elena talked about her day, complained about traffic, asked about my upcoming conference in Denver. Normal conversation between normal spouses, except I now knew she was asking about Denver because it would give her 3 unsupervised days to commit espionage. You'll miss me while I'm gone? I asked, twirling pasta around my fork. Of course. Who else will I complain to about the neighbor's dog? Max seems like a good listener. Elena's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. Max? You're a CTO. You mention him sometimes. Seems like you two work closely together. We work together, yes. But Max isn't exactly the type you complain to about neighborhood dogs. She took a sip of wine. Why do you ask? No reason. Just wondering about your work friends. My work friends are boring, Nick. Trust me, you're not missing anything. After dinner, Elena retreated to her home office, a converted bedroom she kept locked when she wasn't using it. Need to review some files for tomorrow, she said, kissing my forehead like I was a child being sent to bed early. I watched TV and pretended to read, but mostly I listened to the sound of Elena typing behind her locked door. What was she working on? How long had this been going on? And how had I been so completely blind to what was happening in my own house? Around 10 o'clock, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Device active, monitoring commenced, act normal. Act normal. Right. Because there's nothing more normal than discovering your wife is involved in international espionage. Elena emerged from her office an hour later, looking tired but satisfied. Long day, she said, settling onto the couch next to me. What are you watching? Some cop show. Guy's trying to catch his partner who's been selling information to criminals. Elena glanced at the screen, then at me. Sounds familiar? Yeah, there's always someone betraying someone else. Makes you wonder who you can really trust. Good thing we trust each other, Elena said, curling up against my shoulder. I put my arm around her, feeling the pen in her purse just 15 feet away, and wondered if she could feel my heart hammering against my ribs. Good thing. That night, Elena fell asleep quickly, but I lay awake staring at the ceiling. The woman next to me looked like my wife, sounded like my wife, even smelled like my wife. But the Elena I'd married wouldn't have been capable of this level of deception. Or maybe she would have, and I'd just never given her enough credit. My phone buzzed with another text. Meeting tomorrow, 2 p.m., Industrial Boulevard. Come alone. I deleted the message and tried to sleep, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw those photographs from the warehouse. Elena with Max. Elena handling mysterious devices. Elena living a life I knew nothing about. The next morning, Elena was gone before I woke up. No goodbye, no note, just the lingering smell of her perfume and an empty coffee mug in the sink. I found myself checking her purse, confirming the pen was still there among her things, feeling like a criminal in my own home. At work, I couldn't concentrate. Every email, every meeting, every mundane cybersecurity task felt meaningless compared to what was happening in my real life. I kept checking my phone, expecting updates from Agent Hollis, but there was nothing. At 2 p.m., I drove back to Warehouse C. The device is working perfectly, Hollis reported, showing me a computer screen filled with data streams and location markers. Your wife met with Antonov this morning. They're accelerating their timeline. What does that mean? It means the transfer is happening tonight, not later this week. They're moving faster than we anticipated. My stomach dropped. Tonight? We've been monitoring their communications. Antonov received new instructions from his handlers. They want the software transferred immediately. Where? We're not sure yet. But your wife is the key. She has access to the company's secure servers, and she's the one who will initiate the upload. Hollis turned to face me. Mr. Harmon, I need you to go home and act completely normal. Don't give Elena any reason to suspect anything has changed. And then what? Then we catch them in the act, and this nightmare ends. I drove home through rush hour traffic, practicing normal expressions in the rearview mirror. Normal husband, coming home from normal work, to his normal wife who definitely wasn't stealing military secrets. Elena's car was already in the driveway. Elena was pacing the kitchen when I walked in, her phone pressed to her ear and her free hand gesturing wildly at nothing. She looked up when she saw me, her expression shifting from agitated to forced calm in the span of a heartbeat. I have to go, she said into the phone. We'll finish this later. Everything okay? I asked, setting my keys on the counter. Fine, I just work stress, you know how it is. But her smile was too bright and she couldn't seem to stand still. How was your day? Boring meetings about network security protocols, the usual excitement. I opened the refrigerator and grabbed a beer, using the movement to study Elena's reflection in the stainless steel door. She was checking her phone every few seconds. You seem wound up. Big presentation tomorrow. I want everything to be perfect. The drone project? Elena's phone buzzed, and she glanced at it immediately. Yes, the drone project. Very important client. Anyone I know? I doubt it. International consulting firm. Very technical, very confidential. She slipped her phone into her back pocket. Actually, I need to go back to the office tonight. Final preparations. My beer suddenly tasted like metal. Tonight? It's already after 6. I know, but Max found some issues with the software integration. We need to fix them before tomorrow's demo. Elena grabbed her purse from the hallway table, the purse containing the FBI's tracking device. I'll probably be late. Don't wait up. Want me to come with you? I could help with the technical stuff. Elena's laugh was sharp and quick. Nick, you're sweet, but this is way outside your expertise. Besides, it'll be boring. Just Max and me staring at code all night. Just Max and me. The words hit like a physical blow, but I kept my expression neutral. Okay, I'll probably just watch TV and go to bed early. Perfect. Elena kissed my cheek, the same casual peck she'd given me 1,000 times before. Love you. Love you too. I watched through the kitchen window as Elena backed out of the driveway, then immediately called the number agent Hollis had given me. She's moving, I said when he answered. Tonight, not tomorrow. She's going to the office with Max. We know. We've been monitoring their communications since this afternoon. They're not going to the office, Mr. Harmon. They're going to a warehouse on the east side of town. What kind of warehouse? The kind where people do things they don't want witnesses for. We'll be watching, but we need to let them initiate the transfer before we can move in. What if something goes wrong? Nothing will go wrong, Mr. Harmon. Your wife will attempt to upload the stolen software, our device will prevent the transfer, and we'll arrest them both. Clean and simple. And then you'll know exactly who you've been married to for the past 3 years. After Hollis hung up, I sat in my kitchen staring at the half-empty beer bottle and trying to process what was about to happen. In a few hours, Elena would be in federal custody, and I'd be, what, a widower, a victim, a fool who'd been played by professionals? My phone rang again. This time it was Doug Harper, my old college roommate, and the closest thing I had to a best friend. Doug was a former cop turned private investigator, which mostly meant he followed cheating spouses and served subpoenas for a living. Nick, buddy, you sound terrible. What's wrong? Elena's having an affair. Crap. I'm sorry, man. You sure? Positive. And it gets worse. How much worse? I looked around my kitchen at the evidence of the life Elena and I had built together and made a decision. Meet me at Murphy's bar. I'll tell you everything. An hour later, Doug was staring at me across a beer-stained table like I'd told him I was an alien. Let me get this straight, he said, running a hand through his thinning hair. The FBI recruited you to spy on your wife because she's stealing military secrets with her Russian boyfriend? That's the summary, yes. And right now, while we're sitting here drinking beer, federal agents are preparing to arrest Elena and this Max guy. That's the plan. Doug finished his beer in one long gulp. Nick, this is either the craziest thing I've ever heard, or you're having some kind of breakdown. I've got photos. I showed him the pictures Agent Hollis had given me. Elena and Max together. Elena handling the electronic devices. Elena looking nothing like the woman Doug had met at our wedding 3 years ago. Jesus, Doug whispered. How long has this been going on? I don't know. Months, maybe longer. The FBI wouldn't tell me everything. What are you going to do? I don't know that either. Wait for it to be over, I guess. Then figure out what's left of my life. Doug signaled the bartender for another round. You want to know what I think? Not really, but I'm sure you'll tell me anyway. I think you should be there. What? When they arrest her. I think you should see it happen. You need closure, Nick. You need to see who Elena really is, not just hear about it secondhand from some FBI agent. Hollis told me to stay away. Hollis doesn't have to live with the questions for the rest of his life. You do. Doug leaned forward. Look, I've got surveillance equipment in my car. We can park somewhere while with a view. Watch the whole thing go down. You don't have to get involved, but at least you'll know. The idea was insane. It was also exactly what I wanted to do. Where's this warehouse? Doug asked. 30 minutes later, we were parked on a hill overlooking the East Industrial District. Doug's telephoto camera lens focused on Warehouse 7. Elena's car was already there, along with a black Mercedes I didn't recognize. That's got to be the boyfriend's car, Doug said, adjusting the camera settings. Nice ride for a tech guy. Russian intelligence probably pays well. Through the camera's viewfinder, we could see lights moving around inside the warehouse. Elena and Max were setting up equipment, laptops, what looked like drone components, and several devices I didn't recognize. There, Doug said, handing me the camera. Look at your wife now. Elena was all business, moving with purpose and confidence I'd never seen before. She wasn't the slightly scattered, always late woman I'd married. This Elena knew exactly what she was doing. She looks different, I said. She looks like herself, probably for the first time since you've known her. At 9:40 p.m., everything went to heck. Elena was typing on a laptop when she suddenly stopped and looked around the warehouse like she'd heard something. Max was checking his phone, his expression growing more agitated by the second. Something's wrong, Doug said. Look at their body language. Elena was pointing at the laptop screen, clearly upset. Max was shaking his head, then pulling out his phone to make a call. Even from our distance, we could see they were arguing. The FBI device, and I realized, it's working. They can't complete the transfer, which means the cavalry should be arriving any minute. But the cavalry was already there. Black SUVs were moving into position around the warehouse, their headlights off and their occupants invisible behind tinted windows. "Here we go," Doug whispered, adjusting the camera focus. The FBI moved like a SWAT team in a movie. Fast, coordinated, and overwhelming. Warehouse lights flooded the area, and Agent Hollis's voice boomed through a megaphone. "Federal agents, nobody move!" Through the telephoto lens, I watched Elena's face as she realized what was happening. The mask she'd been wearing for 3 years finally slipped completely, and I saw something I'd never seen before. Elena's scared. Max tried to run and made it about 10 feet before 2 agents tackled him to the concrete floor. Elena just stood there, hands raised, staring at the laptop screen like she couldn't believe her plan had failed. "Got it all on video," Doug said, lowering the camera. "Every second." I watched through binoculars as Elena was handcuffed and led to one of the FBI vehicles. Just before they put her in the back seat, she looked up toward the hill where we were parked. Even from that distance, even in the harsh warehouse lighting, I could swear she was looking directly at me. "Think she knows you're here?" Doug asked. "I think Elena knows a lot of things I'm just starting to figure out." We drove back to Murphy's bar and drank until closing time, but I couldn't get Elena's expression out of my head. Not the fear when the FBI surrounded her, but the cold calculation I'd seen when she was working with Max. That was the real Elena. The woman I'd been married to was just a character she'd been playing. "What happens now?" Doug asked as we stood in the parking lot, both of us too drunk to drive home. "Now I figure out how to be Nick Harmon, single man. Because Nick Harmon, husband, just died in that warehouse. You going to be okay?" I looked up at the stars, barely visible through the city's light pollution, and tried to imagine a future that didn't include Elena. Ask me again in 6 months. But even as I said it, I knew I wouldn't be okay. Not until Elena and Max paid for what they'd done, not until everyone who'd helped them, enabled them, or looked the other way, faced consequences. The FBI had caught them, but that was just the beginning. My revenge was going to be much more personal. The next morning, I woke up on Doug's couch with a hangover that felt like divine punishment and 17 missed calls from Agent Hollis. Elena was in federal custody, Max was cooperating with investigators, and I was officially the most naive husband in Connecticut. "Elena's asking to see you," Hollis said when I finally called him back. "She claims she can explain everything." "I'll bet she can." "Do you want to see her?" I thought about Elena's face in the warehouse, the cold professionalism I'd never seen before. "Not yet. Maybe not ever." "Understood. We'll need you to come in later this week for a full debrief, but for now, you're free to go home and try to process this." Home. The house Elena and I had shared, filled with evidence of a marriage that had apparently been a lie from the beginning. I thanked Doug for the couch and drove back to what used to be my life. Elena's coffee mug was still in the sink. Her magazines were still scattered across the kitchen table. Her shoes were still by the front door, like she'd just stepped out for groceries and would be back any minute. I walked through the house like a crime scene investigator, looking for clues I'd missed. Elena's locked office was now fair game, and what I found there made my hangover feel like a minor inconvenience. Financial records showing payments from accounts I'd never heard of. Technical documents about military drone capabilities. Photos of Elena with Max dating back over a year, and a burner phone containing text messages that made it clear their relationship was both professional and personal. Max: "Your husband suspect anything?" Elena: "Nick, please. He barely notices when I'm gone all night." Max: "After this job, we can be more open about us." Elena: "Can't wait. Playing house with Nick is exhausting." Playing house. 3 years of marriage, and Elena had been playing house. I was sitting in Elena's office, surrounded by evidence of her betrayal, when Doug knocked on my front door. "You look terrible," he said, pushing past me into the hallway. "I feel worse. Want some coffee?" "What I want is to help you burn this place down." Metaphorically speaking. Doug had brought his laptop and a grim expression that usually meant he'd discovered something unpleasant during one of his investigations. "I did some digging on your wife and her boyfriend," he said, setting up at my kitchen table. "Elena Harmon, formerly Elena Vasquez, originally from Miami. Clean background, good credit, no criminal record. Model citizen except for the whole espionage thing. And Max? Maxim Antonov, 38, immigrated from Russia 12 years ago. Also clean officially. But I've got a friend at immigration who says Max has been flagged for unusual travel patterns. Lots of trips to Eastern Europe, always for business conferences that don't seem to exist. Doug turned his laptop screen toward me. But here's the interesting part. Max and Elena weren't just working together. They've been planning together. Look at this. The screen showed social media photos, going back 18 months. Elena and Max at restaurants, at company parties, at what looked like weekend getaways. They weren't hiding their relationship from their coworkers. They were hiding it from me. Everyone at Elena's company knew, I said, studying the photos. Everyone except you. And here's the really fun part. Some of Elena's coworkers have been posting about the FBI raid. Want to see what they're saying about your wife? I did and I didn't, but morbid curiosity won. Doug pulled up several social media posts from DroneWorks employees. Can't believe Elena and Max got arrested. Always thought they were shady. Elena Harmon was stealing company secrets? Shocking. Not really. Max and Elena finally got caught. Wonder what Elena's husband thinks about all this. Poor Nick Harmon. Guy had no idea his wife was a criminal and cheating on him. Poor Nick Harmon. That's what I'd become. An object of pity for people I'd never met. There's more, Doug said, scrolling through additional posts. Elena's friend Tanya has been very chatty on social media. Tanya Rodriguez was Elena's closest friend from work, a gossipy woman who'd always made me uncomfortable during company parties. According to her recent posts, she'd known about Elena and Max's affair for months and thought it was romantic that they were following their hearts. She knew, I said, reading Tanya's posts. Elena's best friend knew she was cheating on me, and she thought it was romantic. Gets better. Look at this post from yesterday. Tanya had posted a long, rambling defense of Elena, claiming she was probably innocent and had been manipulated by Max. According to Tanya, Elena was a victim who had been seduced by a dangerous man and deserved sympathy, not judgment. She's rewriting history, Doug said, making Elena the victim instead of the perpetrator. I stared at Tanya's post, at the comments from other DroneWorks employees who were buying into this narrative, and felt something cold and hard settle in my chest. They're all going to get away with it, I said. What do you mean? Elena and Max will go to prison, but everyone else? Tanya, who knew about the affair and said nothing? Elena's co-workers, who watched her steal company secrets and looked the other way? They'll just go back to their lives like nothing happened. Doug closed his laptop. What are you thinking, Nick? I'm thinking the FBI caught the criminals, but they didn't catch the enablers. And I'm thinking someone should. Someone like you? Someone exactly like me. Over the next week, while Elena sat in federal custody and Max cooperated with investigators, I began my own investigation. Not into espionage or national security, but into the network of people who'd made Elena's betrayal possible. Tanya Rodriguez was first on my list. Using skills I'd developed in cybersecurity, I started mapping Tanya's digital footprint. Social media accounts, online shopping habits, email patterns, everything that painted a picture of who she really was. What I found was a woman who thrived on drama and gossip, who'd known about Elena's affair from the beginning and had actively encouraged it. Text messages Elena had saved on her burner phone showed Tanya giving advice on how to hide the relationship from me. Tanya, just tell Nick you're working late. He never checks up on you anyway. Elena, I feel guilty sometimes. Tanya, don't. You deserve to be happy. Nick's boring. Tanya, Max is so much more exciting than your husband. You should follow your heart. Follow your heart. Right into federal prison. But Tanya's social media posts were still painting Elena as a victim, and people were believing it. Elena's other friends and coworkers were sharing Tanya's posts, adding their own comments about how Elena had been manipulated and deserved better. They were rewriting the story, making Elena the victim and me the boring husband who'd somehow driven his wife into the arms of a Russian spy. That's when I decided boring Nick Harmon was going to become someone much more interesting. I started with Tanya's social media accounts. Nothing illegal, nothing that would get me in trouble with the FBI, just some creative information sharing. Screenshots of her old posts encouraging Elena's affair, along with Elena's text messages thanking Tanya for her advice on how to deceive me. I created anonymous accounts and began posting these screenshots as comments on Tanya's victim narrative posts. Within hours, the narrative began to change. Instead of sympathy for Elena, people were asking why Tanya had encouraged a married woman to have an affair. Wait, Tanya knew Elena was cheating and encouraged it? So much for friendship. Tanya helped Elena lie to her husband. Elena's not a victim if she was planning this for months. Tanya's post defending Elena disappeared by the end of the day. Next, I turned my attention to DroneWorks Industries and the co-workers who'd known what Elena and Max were doing but had never reported it. The company was already under federal investigation, but their employees were largely treating the whole thing as entertainment. I had access to Elena's work computer. She'd given me her passwords months ago when she needed me to check her email while she was sick. What I found there was a trail of suspicious activity that multiple coworkers had witnessed but ignored. Unusual file transfers, after-hours access to secure systems, meetings with Max that weren't on any official calendar. Elena hadn't been particularly careful because she hadn't needed to be. Her coworkers had seen the red flags and chosen to look the other way. I compiled everything into a detailed report and sent it anonymously to DroneWorks Board of Directors, their insurance company, and several cybersecurity trade publications. If Elena's coworkers wanted to treat espionage like workplace gossip, they could explain their negligence to federal investigators and industry reporters. By the end of the week, 3 DroneWorks employees had been suspended pending investigation, and the company's stock price had dropped 15%. But I wasn't done. Elena and Max had hurt me personally, but they'd also damaged national security. The people who'd enabled them, who'd known what was happening and done nothing, deserved consequences too. I was just getting started. 2 weeks after Elena's arrest, Agent Hollis called with news I'd been expecting and dreading in equal measure. Elena wants to make a deal, he said. She's willing to provide information about other potential security breaches in exchange for a reduced sentence. What kind of information? Names of other DroneWorks employees who might have been involved, details about Max's contacts in Russia, financial records showing how the operation was funded. Hollis paused. She's also asking to see you. Still not interested. Mr. Harmon, I understand your anger, but Elena might have information that could prevent future attacks on American interests. If seeing you would encourage her to cooperate fully, then you'll have to find another way to encourage her. I'm done being Elena's useful idiot. But I wasn't done with Elena. I was just getting started. Over the past 2 weeks, my campaign against Elena's enablers had been more successful than I'd hoped. Tanya Rodriguez had been fired from DroneWorks after HR discovered she'd known about Elena's inappropriate relationship with Max and failed to report it. 3 other employees were under investigation for security violations. The company was hemorrhaging talent and reputation. Doug had been helping with surveillance and information gathering, treating the whole thing like the world's most satisfying private investigation case. You've destroyed Elena's entire social and professional network, he said, reviewing our progress over beer at Murphy's Bar. Everyone who helped her, enabled her, or looked the other way is facing consequences. Good. They earned it. What about Elena herself? The FBI thing is justice, but it's not personal. It's not revenge. Doug was right. Elena would go to prison, but that was the government's revenge, not mine. She'd betrayed me personally, made me look like a fool, and then tried to play the victim when she got caught. She deserves something more personal. I've been thinking about that, I said. Elena's always been image conscious. Her reputation, her social status, how people perceive her, that's what matters to her most. And I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly who Elena Harmon really is. The plan I'd been developing was elegant in its simplicity. Elena had spent 3 years lying to me, but she'd also been lying to everyone else. Her friends, her family, her coworkers. They all thought they knew Elena, but they'd only seen the performance. I was going to show them the real Elena. Using Elena's own devices and accounts, I began assembling a comprehensive picture of her deception. Not just the espionage, but everything. Her affair with Max, her contempt for me, her manipulation of friends and coworkers, her complete lack of remorse for any of it. Elena's burner phone contained months of text messages with Max that revealed the depth of their relationship and their shared disdain for everyone around them, including me. Elena. Had dinner with Nick's college friends tonight. God, they're boring. Max, not much longer. After this job, we can disappear together. Elena, can't wait. Nick actually asked if I wanted to renew our wedding vows next year. Max, what did you tell him? Elena, I said yes. Poor bastard has no idea. Her laptop contained detailed financial records showing she'd been siphoning money from our joint accounts to fund her activities with Max. Expensive dinners, hotel rooms, gifts, all paid for with money I'd earned while she was planning to betray our country. Her work computer had emails showing how she'd manipulated coworkers, used company resources for personal gain, and systematically compromised security protocols for months. But the most damaging evidence was Elena's own words about the people who'd trusted her. She'd kept detailed notes about her friends and coworkers, cataloging their weaknesses and insecurities like a predator studying prey. Tanya's desperate to be included in anything that seems exciting, easy to manipulate. Nick is so focused on his work that he never pays attention to what I'm actually doing. Perfect cover. Max thinks he's using me, but I'm the one with the real access. He's just the middleman. Elena hadn't been a victim or a woman led astray by love. She'd been the architect of her own criminal enterprise, using everyone around her as tools to achieve her goals. I compiled everything into a comprehensive digital portfolio: text messages, emails, financial records, photos, and Elena's own notes about the people she'd deceived. Then I began sharing it. Not publicly, not in a way that would compromise the FBI's case, but directly with the people Elena had betrayed. Her family in Miami, who'd thought she was happily married and working in legitimate tech. Her college friends, who'd admired her successful career and marriage. Her former coworkers, who were still defending her on social media. I sent each person a customized package of information, showing them exactly how Elena had viewed and used them. Her sister Maria received text messages where Elena complained about having to visit boring family in Miami. Her college roommate got emails where Elena mocked their pathetic suburban lives. Her former boss received evidence that Elena had been stealing proprietary information long before she met Max. The response was swift and devastating. Maria posted on social media that she was disgusted and heartbroken by her sister's actions and would not be supporting Elena during her legal proceedings. Elena's college friends began sharing their own stories about times Elena had lied to them or used them for personal gain. Her former coworkers started cooperating more fully with federal investigators. Within a week, Elena's entire support network had collapsed. The people who'd been defending her, making excuses for her, or planning to help her through her legal troubles had seen who she really was. Tanya Rodriguez, despite being fired, had been planning to testify as a character witness for Elena. After seeing Elena's notes describing her as desperate and easy to manipulate, Tanya withdrew her support and began cooperating with federal investigators instead. Elena's parents, who'd been hiring lawyers and preparing to mortgage their house to pay for her defense, cut off all contact after learning she'd been stealing from me and mocking them behind their backs. By the time Elena's case went to trial, she was completely alone. No character witnesses, no family support, no friends willing to vouch for her integrity. Just Elena, her court-appointed attorney, and a mountain of evidence showing she was exactly as guilty as the government claimed. Doug and I watched the trial from the gallery, seeing Elena in an orange jumpsuit for the first time since her arrest. She looked smaller somehow, diminished without her network of enablers and admirers. When the judge asked if she had anything to say before sentencing, Elena stood and looked directly at me. "I'm sorry, Nick," she said, her voice barely audible. "I'm sorry for everything." I stared back at her, feeling nothing. No anger, no sadness, no satisfaction. Just emptiness where 3 years of marriage used to be. "I know," I said loud enough for her to hear. "But sorry doesn't fix anything." Elena received 12 years in federal prison. Max got 8 years in exchange for his cooperation. The judge recommended they serve their sentences in different facilities. As Elena was led away in shackles, she looked back at me one more time. I don't know what she was hoping to see: forgiveness, regret, some sign that part of me still cared about her. What she saw was Nick Harmon, cybersecurity expert, walking out of the courtroom and into a life that no longer included her. 6 months after Elena's sentencing, I was back at Grind and Brew, ordering my usual large coffee, black, from Kira. The same barista who'd started this whole mess by writing a phone number on my cup. "Your usual, Nick?" she asked, but there was something different in her voice. Less mysterious, more genuine. Yeah, but this time just write my name on the cup. I've had enough surprises for one lifetime. Kira smiled, a real smile, not the calculated expression I remembered from before. Fair enough. How are you doing? Really doing? Better. Different, but better. It was true. The past 6 months had been a process of rebuilding my life from scratch, figuring out who Nick Harmon was when he wasn't being deceived by his wife. I'd sold the house Elena and I had shared, bought a smaller place closer to downtown, changed jobs, moving to a cybersecurity firm that appreciated my newfound expertise in detecting insider threats. Doug had helped with the transition, both practically and emotionally. You're like a completely different person, he'd told me the week before. More confident, more aware. Elena did you a favor by showing you who she really was. Some favor. I'm serious. You were sleepwalking through your life before this happened. Now you're awake. He was right. The Nick Harmon who'd been married to Elena had been passive, trusting to a fault, content to let other people make decisions about his life. The Nick Harmon sitting in grind and brew 6 months later was someone else entirely. I'd learned to trust my instincts, to ask hard questions, to verify instead of simply believing. I'd learned that sometimes the people closest to you are the ones most capable of betraying you, and that naive trust is just another word for willful blindness. Most importantly, I'd learned that revenge, when properly executed, isn't about violence or dramatic confrontations. It's about consequences. It's about making sure people face the results of their choices. Elena was serving 12 years in federal prison, but that wasn't my revenge. That was justice. My revenge was the fact that she was serving those 12 years completely alone, abandoned by everyone who'd once cared about her, forced to confront who she really was without a support network to enable her delusions. Tanya Rodriguez had been blacklisted from the tech industry after her role in enabling Elena's crimes became public knowledge. She was working retail now, her dreams of climbing the corporate ladder destroyed by her own poor judgment. The DroneWorks employees who'd ignored security violations were facing their own consequences. Some had been fired, others demoted, all of them now known in their industry as people who couldn't be trusted with sensitive information. Max Antonov was serving his 8 years in a federal facility in Arizona, far from the comfortable life he'd built in Connecticut. According to news reports, he'd been attacked twice by other inmates who didn't appreciate foreign spies. But the most satisfying consequence was the simplest one. Everyone now knew the truth about Elena Harmon. Not the victim narrative Tanya had tried to create, not the tragic love story some people had imagined, but the truth. Elena was a criminal who'd betrayed her country, her husband, and everyone who'd trusted her, all for money and the excitement of living a double life. Nick, I looked up from my coffee to see a woman I didn't recognize standing next to my table. Mid-30s, professional dress, nervous smile. I'm sorry to bother you, but are you Nick Harmon, Elena's ex-husband? My stomach tightened. Even 6 months later, being identified as Elena's ex-husband felt like wearing a scarlet letter. Yes, I'm Jennifer Walsh. I work at Morrison Tech, the company Elena worked for before DroneWorks. She gestured to the empty chair across from me. Could I sit for a minute? I nodded, curious despite myself. I wanted to thank you, Jennifer said, settling into the chair, for what you did after Elena's arrest, for making sure everyone knew the truth about her. I'm not sure I follow. Elena worked at Morrison for 2 years before she moved to DroneWorks. During that time, she stole client information, manipulated coworkers, and generally made everyone's life miserable. But she was smart about it, careful. We all suspected she was trouble, but we could never prove anything. Jennifer pulled out her phone and showed me a news article about Elena's case. When all the information about her crimes became public, it validated everything we'd suspected. More importantly, it gave us the evidence we needed to review her time at Morrison and undo some of the damage she'd caused. What kind of damage? Elena had blamed several coworkers for projects that failed, security breaches that happened on her watch, client relationships that went bad because of her actions. People lost promotions, got written up, some even got fired because of Elena's lies. Jennifer's expression hardened. But once we knew who she really was, we were able to investigate properly. 3 people got their jobs back, 2 got promotions they'd been denied, and the one got a formal apology from the company. I stared at Jennifer, processing what she'd just told me. Elena was destroying people's careers even before the espionage. Elena was destroying people's careers because that's who she was. The espionage was just the biggest example. Jennifer stood to leave. I wanted you to know that exposing her didn't just prevent future crimes. It helped fix past ones too. After Jennifer left, I sat in the coffee shop thinking about the conversation. Elena's pattern of manipulation and betrayal went back years, probably to the beginning of her career. How many people had she hurt? How many lives had she damaged with her lies? And how many of those people were better off now because Elena's true nature had been exposed? My phone buzzed with a text from Doug. Drinks tonight? I've got news about the Elena situation. I met Doug at Murphy's Bar, our usual spot for processing the aftermath of my marriage's spectacular collapse. He was grinning like he'd won the lottery. You're gonna love this, he said, sliding a beer across the table. Remember how Elena was trying to make a deal with the FBI, providing information about other potential security threats? Yeah. What about it? Turns out Elena's information was mostly useless. She'd been exaggerating her importance in Max's operation, trying to make herself seem more valuable than she actually was. Doug's grin widened. The FBI figured out she was lying and withdrew the plea deal. Elena's going to serve the full 12 years. I felt a smile tugging at the corners of my mouth. She tried to manipulate the FBI? She tried to manipulate the FBI the same way she manipulated everyone else, by lying about her role and importance. Except the FBI had other sources, other evidence. They knew she was full of crap. So Elena's going to prison for 12 years, with no possibility of early release, because she couldn't stop lying even when it would have helped her to tell the truth. Exactly. She's serving the maximum sentence, because she couldn't resist trying to con her way out of consequences one more time. We clinked beer bottles in a toast to Elena's final act of self-sabotage. There's more, Doug said. Max has been cooperating fully with investigators, providing real information about Russian intelligence operations. He's probably going to get a sentence reduced. And Elena? Elena's got nothing to offer because she was never as important as she pretended to be. She was just Max's access point, not his partner. Now she's going to spend the next 12 years thinking about that. I finished my beer and looked around Murphy's Bar, at the normal people living their normal lives, dealing with their normal problems. A year ago, I thought I was one of them. Now I knew better. You know what the funny thing is? I said to Doug. Elena thought she was so smart, so sophisticated. She thought she was playing everyone around her, living this exciting double life while the rest of us were boring and naive. And in the end, she was the most naive person of all. She actually believed she could betray everyone who trusted her and face no real consequences. She thought she could lie her way out of anything, manipulate anyone, use people indefinitely without them ever fighting back. Doug raised his beer bottle. To Elena Harmon, who learned too late that actions have consequences. To Elena Harmon, I agreed, who discovered that the boring husband she'd been deceiving for 3 years was a lot more dangerous than she thought. We finished our drinks and walked out into the Hartford night. The city looked different to me now, sharper, more real, less forgiving. I'd learned to see it the way it actually was, not the way I'd wanted it to be. 6 months ago, I'd been Nick Harmon, the naive husband who trusted too easily and paid attention too little. Tonight, I was Nick Harmon, the man who'd systematically destroyed the life of someone who'd betrayed him, using nothing but truth and consequences. Elena was in prison, alone and forgotten. Max was cooperating with federal investigators, trying to minimize his own sentence. Tanya and the other enablers were facing the professional and personal consequences of their choices. And I was free from Elena's lies, free from other people's expectations, free to build a life based on reality instead of comfortable illusions. As I drove home to my new house and my new life, I thought about Elena sitting in her prison cell, probably still believing she was the victim in this story, still believing she'd been wronged, manipulated, treated unfairly by a system that didn't understand her complexity. She'd have 12 years to figure out the truth, that she'd destroyed her own life through her own choices, and that the boring husband she'd underestimated had simply made sure she faced the consequences. The last laugh, as it turned out, belonged to me.